life. Well, while we were all extremely fortunate that the worst of Hurricane Dorian did not come visit us this past week, I know that most of us spent at least a couple of days preparing for that possibility. We brought in the outside patio furniture inside, which made our cat believe she had a new jungle gym. And we went out and we collected all of those things that would allow us to survive 2-3 days or more with sufficient food and water and comfort, even if we were to lose power. But for those that live on the coast, they have an additional step that they have to consider, and I know some of you may do this as well, even here in Central Florida. And that is, you assemble a go bag. And a go bag are the most important things in your life that you have in one bag so you can quickly take with you if you need to evacuate. It should be the most important documents that you have, identification, medications that you may need, clothes, a little bit of cash would be handy. And whatever it is that you felt that you couldn't do without and you couldn't risk being destroyed by the storm. Now, I will admit, I don't have a go bag. Now, I grew up in California where earthquakes could hit at any time, so I should have had a go bag there, but I didn't. And we lived in South Florida for a while, much closer to the coast, should have had a go bag, but didn't. The single biggest reason I don't have a go bag, to be honest with you, is I don't know what I would put in it. I really haven't identified what stuff is most important to me, things that I couldn't do without. See, for me, after any sort of catastrophe, and I'm sure it is for you, the most important thing is that the family is all fine, including the cat. But beyond that, there's no stuff that I worry about replacing. Now, before I get a little bit too self-satisfied with how spiritually advanced I am for not worrying about stuff, I have a confession to make. Here's how I spent the 2 days when the storm was sitting nearby waiting to come in. I spent those 2 days of unexpected leave sorting through the boxes and boxes of stuff that I have collected throughout the course of my life, all the memorabilia that tells the story of my life. And there are, of course, pictures of family that I treasure and will always keep. But as I sorted through the rest of this and tried to categorize and decide what I really wanted to keep, here's what I recognized. The story that I tell of my life is one that makes me look good. You see, I have collected a lot of memorabilia of the good times I've had and shared with others, and of the achievements I've accomplished, and the fact that occasionally someone has told me that they loved me. That's the story of my life that I collect and keep. You see, we don't tend to keep the things that tell us of our failures, right? We have a failed relationship, we get rid of everything that reminds us of that person. And if we've had a major setback or trial in our life, perhaps a serious illness, it's not like we keep all of the documents from the hospital to remind us of our weakness. And while we put good report cards on the refrigerator, when the grades aren't so good, those are not the ones that are getting tacked up. So I will admit that even though I don't have a go bag, I have definitely decided what's most important to me. And that's telling a story of my life that is positive and memorable and makes me look good. And that in itself is not a bad thing. We all need affirmation in our life. But it becomes a bad thing if it's the most important thing. And this is the challenge that Jesus gives his disciples in today's gospel reading. He tells them that if they value anything more than being his disciple, including their own life, they cannot be his disciple. And a lot of people have read this, and it was true, obviously, for the early martyrs, that it means we need to be willing to lay down our life physically for our Lord. And that can be a possibility. We know even today there are martyrs for the faith around the world. But for most of us, we'll never be called to that. For most of us, we'll be called to lay down our life in a very different way. and that is to sacrifice that ego, that reputation, that sense of self-worth, that being loved for the gospel. And in that context, I fail Jesus' challenge issued to his disciples in today's gospel. Because I will admit, when I look at my life, that my desire to protect my reputation, to not be disliked, to not be hated, gets in the way of me faithfully and consistently proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ in all circumstances. Now, in some circumstances, it's relatively easy. Sunday at Mass, proclaiming the gospel, when you're preaching to the proverbial and actual choir, well, then it's easy to boldly proclaim the gospel message of Jesus Christ. But even then, any homilist will tell you that we have that little voice in our head telling us to hold back occasionally, because you know what? We don't like the angry comments or the letters to the bishop that come when we offer a challenge of the gospel that might strike a little too close to home. You know, those comments or those letters that say, and I know Father has heard about these before. He's never gotten them, by the way, but he's heard about them, where they say, Father, I come to Mass just to feel God's loved and to pray. Don't talk to me about how I need to change my life. He never gets those, but I do. So we do hold back even in this context, but more importantly, we hold back in proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ outside of the safe environments of our church. So why do I do that? I do that because I don't want to be rejected. I do that because I'm afraid it might make someone unhappy with me, or that I may be made to be look like a fool. And in that moment, I realize that I'm loving my life more than I'm loving being a disciple of Jesus Christ. So this week, I've decided to devote to doing some serious personal reflection, starting with this afternoon after Mass. And I would invite any of you for whom this might strike even the littlest chord to maybe do this as well. Spend a little time this afternoon asking yourself this question. What is it that I love more than my discipleship with Jesus Christ? What gets in the way? What distracts or diverts me? Maybe it's my reputation. Maybe it's the comfortable life that I've built that might be threatened if I truly live the gospel. Maybe it's some way I like to spend my time, some entertainment that I'm addicted to, or some sports, or something else in my life that I'm devoting all of my energy and effort and time to, and it gets in the way of my commitment as a disciple of Jesus Christ. It may be more than one thing, but be kind to yourself, just pick one. And then ask the next question, which is the question I need to ask this week. What do I need to change today, right now, to remove that barrier to fully following Jesus? And if you find yourself after doing that self-examination that, you know what, I'm great, nothing gets in the way, then congratulations, I am very, very proud of you. You are a great disciple. But maybe then take it a step further yourself as well, too, and do a daily examine that says, are all of my actions, every action during the day, consistent with that commitment of being a disciple? Am I loving the Lord more than I'm loving my own life? Am I willing to carry the cross of the abuse I might take for standing up for the gospel message of Jesus Christ? God is calling us in today's gospel to sacrifice our life for Him. It's a tough gospel to preach. When Father David put me on the schedule for today, I wasn't happy, because it's a challenge, and it's a challenge for all of us, and I know it's a challenge especially for me. For God is calling me to surrender all of who I am, my ego, my reputation, my pride, to serve Him. You know, I had great educators growing up. I think I've mentioned before, I went to high school at St. Ignatius College Prep in San Francisco, Jesuit educated. And there was the prayer that they taught us then that I wish I had truly internalized, because I think I need to do so more now. Lord, teach me to be generous, to serve you as you deserve, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wounds, to toil and not to seek for rest, to labor and not to look for any reward, save that of knowing that I do your holy will. To give and to not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wounds, to toil and labor and not to seek any reward. I think this may be the only thing I need in my go bag.